We had a very constructive and open discussion. Several members of us here in the United States Senate, a bipartisan grouping with the Foreign Minister from Denmark, the Foreign Minister from Greenland, as well as our ambassador. I think it's important to send the message that here in the Congress, we recognize and support the sovereignty of the people of Greenland, that we show respect for them as a people, that we should not be afraid of engagement and direct dialogue, and that direct dialogue is going to be important going forward. So the fact that they had an opportunity to visit with the Secretary of State and the Vice President today was important to that dialogue and allow them to speak to it. They have a very tight engagement window, and so we want to respect their time.
Yeah, so it will be very,
Move forward, 4 minutes.
Yes. On behalf of Vivian and myself, we just want to thank you for this meeting, and not only this meeting, but for close, regular contact and continuously strong support. We will meet again Friday in Copenhagen, so we will continue our discussion. And it is important that people in Congress and the Senate emphasize that, of course, everybody has to respect the UN Charter and the territorial integrity of the Kingdom of Denmark. Having said that, we know that we are in a different geopolitical situation in comparison with like 10 years ago, when everybody believed that the Arctic should be low-tension area and everybody took the peace dividend. Things have changed. But we are also ready to step up. We have done that. We have invested almost 15 billion US dollars last year and the year before in capabilities in Greenland, and we are ready to do more. It should be done respectfully in a close cooperation with the Kingdom of Denmark and US and in the framework of NATO. So thank you very much.
Did the Vice President take the option of military option off the table?
Yes, I'm sorry, we're running totally.
Do you have faith Congress will be able to step in?
Thanks a lot.
They are extremely late, so we'll offer apologies on their behalf.
Senator Gosky, the President today kept open all possible options to take over Greenland. Didn't seem to rule out military option as well. Is that responsible for him to continue to keep all options on the table?
I think as we look to the way that this president uses his words and his rhetoric to gain leverage, I think that we have seen is classic Trump. I do think it was important that the dialogue that the ministers had today with our Secretary of State and with the Vice President were held, and that there was agreement to continued dialogue. And I think that was underscored, and I think you saw that from both the Secretary of State and Vice President.
I think one of the most important things to come out of this is that this entire discussion is based upon a false premise. And that is that somehow America has to control Greenland in order to develop national security assets to protect our security interests in the Arctic, which are real. We've had a base in Greenland for 75 years. We have a treaty with Denmark and Greenland for national security assets, and one of the things we learned in the meeting is that the Danes and the Greenlanders are very open to additional national security assets in Greenland in order to meet whatever risks there are. So the idea that we have to own the country in order to protect our national security is just nonsense. We have bases all over the world. We don't own Qatar, we have Al Udeid Air Base. We don't own South Korea, we have a huge base outside of Seoul. So the whole premise of this is a false premise if it's based upon national security, because it can be protected and made part of our national security setting without controlling the real estate.
And this is actually making us less secure. By us attacking or claiming to attack a NATO ally, we are essentially destroying one of the most secure partnerships and alliances that we need to counteract Russia and to counteract China. So the ostensible reason that we're doing this is because we need to stop their growth. We're actually weakening ourselves versus us and them going into the future. In order for us to be able to fight the China problem, fight the Russian problem going in the future, we need to have great alliances with the EU and NATO nations. This, right now, if this president fully goes through with all this action, would actually destroy NATO and a long-term relationship.
And it would be the greatest gift ever to Vladimir Putin.
And China.
Do you think, based on your conversation with the officials from Denmark and Greenland, that they came away from their meeting with the White House officials understanding a different sense of all of this? I mean, do you think that the White House understands what you understand, that they don't need to take over Greenland? How did they message that to you in there?
I think it was made apparent that there were areas where they agreed to disagree.
So it sounds like that the White House is keeping open the option of using force to take over Greenland?
All we can share is what we heard from the ministers themselves, who agreed that the discussion was surrounding continued and ongoing dialogue and discussions about security interests, but that there were areas where they simply disagreed. And I think obviously taking over Greenland was an area where they felt clear disagreement with any statements that have come out of the White House and
Do you need a war powers resolution? Do you need to do a war powers resolution on Greenland specifically?
I've introduced language in regards to that. We're letting it germinate now to make sure it's there. I'm going to keep it on the shelf as an option should we ever need it. But I've authored that language, and we'll make sure to have it handy in case it rises to the moment.
Senator Rasmussen, what about your legislation? Could you talk about the level of Republican support for the measure you have?
with Senator Shaheen. This is legislation that effectively acknowledges and underscores the role that we play as a NATO nation, working with our NATO allies, that we do not move against a NATO ally, and that no funds shall be expended to do so. So this is a message that I think is very clear and very strong, and quite honestly, one that I never thought I would have to author and introduce in the United States Congress.
What is your sense of the support for that? Do you think that you can actually get that on the floor? Do you think it can move? Have you heard anything about that potential?
I hope it's ultimately not necessary, but we are operating in times where we're having conversations about things that we never thought even possible. To use the word, the name Greenland in the context of a war powers resolution, to me is absolutely stunning.
Yeah, this is a fight that's making us weaker, not stronger. Number one, Greenland, Denmark are close allies. Number two, Greenland has totally cooperated with us in assisting any national security needs we have, as Senator King said. Number three, the rhetoric that goes from cooperation to threat turns our goodwill into bad will. And what the foreign minister told us is in Greenland they have lots of 4th of July celebrations. Communities are voting against funding them. So we have all that we can possibly want in the cooperation that will allow us to get all the national security assets that are required. And this process is undercutting that.
Military action against Greenland would be the most serious national geopolitical mistake this country could make. It would weaken us, other than abandoning Ukraine. Those two things would absolutely weaken this country, because our strength is within our allies. I've been on the Armed Services and Intelligence Committee for 13 years. What I have learned is that America's asymmetric advantage in the world is allies. China has customers. We have allies. Russia has neither customers nor allies. But we have allies, and to try to undermine and really eviscerate the NATO alliance by even discussing military action against a NATO ally is an inestimable loss of the not only the strategic advantage that we have, but just our basic geopolitical standing in the world. It
Not
would
just
be
NATO,
a gigantic
EU
mistake.
also, to an extent, with the economic power of EU, Canada, the United States, to be able to leverage everything we can versus let China growth. If we do something stupid like this, we lose all that, and then it's just us versus China, and that is a hard fight long fight that we may not end up winning.
All right, final question. They call this
Senator, congressional power, and especially Senators King and Murkowski, where do you think we are right now in the balance of power between congressional and executive?
Every day, Congress needs to assert theirs. Article 1, every day we should be thinking if we are fully asserting our authorities under the Constitution.
Is Congress right now?
No.
Some days, no.
Congress has abdicated its power largely. I'd say it's the 7th inning. We're behind 4-3, but the game isn't over.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, Vivian.
Thanks so much.